Welcome to the Burning Eyes Tech channel, guys, and welcome to episode 2 of the WS-011. Now, for those of you that don't know this already, this is the Windows Server 2019 administration course, and in today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at principles and tools. I mean, you've got to start somewhere, right? Now, when it comes to the topics in this particular episode, we're going to be taking a look at Windows Admin Center, Server Manager, Remote Server Administration Tools, the Windows PowerShell, a bit of an overview of least privilege administration concept, delegated privileges, privileged access workstations, and lastly, jump servers. So this episode is going to be a bit lengthy. Not all episodes in this series are going to be the same. Some of them are going to be about half an hour. Some of them are going to be about 5 or 10 minutes. It depends on what the particular topics is on that specific day. So don't shoot the messenger. I'm just delivering it as Microsoft intends. So let's look at the first topic being Windows Admin Center. Alright guys, before we jump into the gist of it, with Windows Server 2019, Microsoft has released this new free utility called Windows Admin Center. This tool will become the major tool for server management. So what I mean by that is everything is going virtual, everything is going remote, and everything is going cloud. So this tool is going to allow you to manage your servers via web-based console in a browser, for that sake. I mean, we all knew we were heading there, and well, guess what? We are there now. So this remote management tool allows you to manage physical servers on premises. You can manage your Hyper-V virtual servers, servers in the cloud, which are hosted on Azure, also servers hosted in an environment. So this all at no additional cost. It's completely free. It's basically going to simplify and streamline your server management via web console in a nutshell. So this bad boy allows you to configure and troubleshoot your servers as well as manage your workloads remotely, all from one convenient location, being, you've guessed it, your web browser. So let's take a look at some of the technicalities and benefits of the Admin Center. Alright, so Windows Admin Center consolidates multiple admin tools into a single console that can be easily deployed and accessed through a web interface. I mean, we kind of established that already. Windows Admin Center is a modular web application comprised of the following 4 modules. Server Manager, I mean, no surprise there, right? Failover clusters, hyper-converged clusters, and Windows 10 clients, eh? Windows 10. Windows Admin Center has 2 main components, the first of which being Gateway, and the second being Web Server. So that's some of the technicalities. Now let's take a look at some of the benefits of the Admin Center. So when it comes to benefits, they try their best to try and make this look as familiar as possible, to avoid confusion and so that you can go and adapt very quickly to it. So familiar functionality, easy to install. So it's very easy, but yet you still need to go and install this sucker, unfortunately. Complements existing solutions. So if you've got any existing solutions, even if there's something as old school and simple as physical servers on premises, it complements that. So if you've got physical servers on premises, guess what? You don't have to be at the office anymore. Unless you physically need to go and swap a RAM chip or a hard drive or plug a cable in and out, you don't need to be there. So yes, this tool is a great remote and cloud tool. And believe it or not, it's actually got nothing to do with COVID-19. I mean, this tool was obviously released when Server 2019 came out, which has been quite some time now. And they did a survey at some point where they said in the next 5 years or so, majority of you technicians and IT people are going to be working from home. I mean, most people are actually already there and not because of COVID. So it's manageable from the internet, like we just said. Enhanced security, Azure integration, Azure or Azure, depending on how you want to pronounce that. Extensibility, no external dependencies. Okay, guys, so now that we've got that out of the way, I think let's go on over to Server 2019 and actually try and download and install the Windows Admin Center. Before we do that, I just want to mention that this tool works on most versions of Server. It starts from 2008 R2 and onwards. However, with 2008 R2, it's got very limited functionality. From 2012 onwards, you should have full functionality, but 2008 R2, very limited functionality. Okay, so let's go over to the server. And here we are, boys and girls, on my Server 2019. So at first glance, it looks very much the same as Server 2016, 2012 R2. You're only really going to start noticing the differences when you start actually playing with the functionalities which is only available on 2019. Now, like usual, like you would expect, there's no browsers, nothing installed in this server, not even Chrome, for crying out loud. So I'm going to go to Internet Explorer. I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm going to go and drop the link in here. You can see that's the link. I'll make a little bubble pop up for you guys so you guys can see the link clearly. So when you go there, it's going to download that file. It's about 70, 80 megabytes that download. So let's quickly download that sucker. You can see it pops up over here at the bottom. It's about 75 megabytes in size. Let's save that son of a gun. Here we go. Open folder. Let's run that. Here we go. Standard license agreement. Unfortunately, we've got to accept that. Next. What kind of data do you want to send to Microsoft? I wish there was an option that just says no. So I suppose I'm just going to go with the defaults. Next. Use Microsoft Update. Like usual, I prefer to be in control here. So I suppose it's your choice. I'm just going to go with that one that says recommended. Funny enough, the one that's recommended is actually not the default one. Strange, right? Next. Install the admin center. Yes, please. Next. Do I want to allow it to modify all this mumbo jumbo? In this case, this is a virtual machine running in the cloud. I'm running a bit low on space on my computer locally, to run this server. So I thought, let me just do it in the cloud. Just going to go with all the defaults. Next. Select the port. Just going on the default. You can see that's the encrypted port. So while that's installing, obviously we don't want to use port 80, that's clear text. We obviously want to go use port 443, which is encrypted, to be able to do this. And there we go. It's done being installed. Open this URL in a browser or on a PC. You can see there. See what browser supports. Alright. Now all that's left to do is just to access the Windows Server Admin Center via browser, because we just installed it. Something worth mentioning at this point in time, if you try and install it and it gives you an error where it says cannot be installed, that's normally because you're trying to install it on your domain controller. Do not install this on your domain controller. It's going to give you an error. It doesn't work if you install it on the Windows domain controller. So I'm going to go here and type in HTTPS, my server name, Windows Server 20, I believe. And that should do the trick, I think. Go, connecting. Okay, it seems it does not support my browser being Internet Explorer. That's the only browser that's installed on the server by default. So I'm going to go and quickly install Chrome. There's going to be a quick time lapse here, and by the time I'm done, you guys will see me with Chrome browser trying to access the same website. So see you in a bit. And we're back. I just installed Chrome browser, so let's try the stunt again. HTTPS, server's name, which is Windows Server 20. Probably going to ask me for username and password again. Here we go. It's Burning Ice Tech, the same as the channel name. And here we go. You can see something's happening. Just gonna go through all of that. So it just wants to tell you what's new. Just close all that, close all that. So what's gonna happen here is, by default, the server where you installed Windows Admin Center, that's gonna show here already. So there's already gonna be one. So the reason why I've got one there, that's because I've installed Admin Center on that server being called Windows Server 20. If you want any additional servers, whether they are physically on premises, Hyper-V servers, whether they're on Azure or hosted somewhere else for that matter, you're going to have to go and add those suckers. So where you would gonna go and do that, I'm not going to go through this whole procedure. You're going to go click here on add. And here you guys just go and choose what kind of server it is you want to go and add and how and where and all that kinds of jazz. So that is not something I'm going to do in this course, because it's not necessary that you know how to go and add this specifically for the exam. But if you'd like to know how to go and do that, I am going to do that separately in a separate video, which is just going to be random specific topics on server. So there's going to be a specific video where I specifically show you how to go and install the admin center, which we already did in this video, but then also how to actually go and add various kinds of servers on premises, virtual, Hyper-V, some of them that's on Azure. I'm going to go and add all of those and show you how you can actually go and manage it. So that's going to be the focus of just that video. We're limited with time in this specific one because I've got a lot of topics to cover. So for now, that's how and where you go and do that. So let's go back to our list of topics and see what our next one on the agenda is. Okay, and as we can see, the second bullet point we need to cover is Server Manager. Now that's not something new. That's something we've had for quite a bit of time now. I mean, I believe that's been out since 2012 of Server. I might be mistaking there. Definitely not something new. Microsoft has just kept upgrading it over the years. Now, the server manager is a very easy tool to find. It is quite literally the first thing you see on a server when you start it up besides the desktop. So let me show you guys what that looks like. As you can see, we're back on server, and this is the server manager on my virtual machine in the cloud, which has got server 2019 installed. This little thing, this little window we've got open in front of us, the dashboard, if you will, is the first thing you'll see on your server when you start it up, besides the desktop, obviously. If you for some reason do not see it automatically, it could be that some other person might have just turned off the automatic startup. That is actually something you can go and do. So if this little thing bugs you, if you don't want this thing to pop up automatically when you start your server, you can simply just go and turn it off. Now, if you find that you don't know where it is because someone else has turned it off, you can simply, let me just close this up, just go to start, and there it is. So you'll find it there. There it is as well. In quite a few cases, it might actually even be pinned to the taskbar here on some servers. So that is as quick and easy as it is to go and find it. Just going to go click on that. And there you go. Bob's your uncle. Really is as easy as that. Okay, so let's look a little bit at the technicalities about Server Manager. So what can server administrators actually do with the Server Manager? Now, before we actually jump into my little list here of some of the things we can actually go and do, Server Manager is probably 10 to 1 going to be replaced by the Windows Admin Center, which we did in the previous topic. So Server Manager is still there. You can still go and use it. But you'll notice as I go through this list, there's a lot of similarities between the Server Manager and the Admin Center. The Admin Center is just going to streamline it and allow you to go and consolidate this all into one little platform which you can go and manage from the cloud. So the first topic on the agenda, or the first thing I can actually go and do, I should say, is manage the local server. That goes without saying. And then also remotely manage multiple servers. Doesn't that sound like the Windows Admin Center we just talked about? Next one, configure the local server. Get basic information about installed hardware. No surprise there. Query event logs. So if you ever find yourself needing to go and query event logs, this is one place, not the only way. You can go and check it. Monitor the status of services. That's one of the first things you see when a server manager actually pops up. Perform best practice analysis. Check performance monitors. Okay, and then should the server manager open, which let's face it is going to happen 10 to 1 automatically, it gives you quick access to quite a bunch of things. So this is just to make your life easier. It's obviously not the only way you can go and do some of these things. Now, what does it actually give us quick access to? So one of the first things it gives us quick access to is adding roles and features. Not the only way. We've mentioned that quite a few times. So it's one of the first things you'll see. So if you go click on manage at the top right hand side, you have the ability to go and add a role or feature there or remove it from there. Alternatively, you can just click on the big button that says add roles and features right in the middle. You cannot miss it. What else can you go and do? You can go and add servers to manage if you'd like to manage servers remotely. Very much like the Windows Admin Center, is it not? Create a server group if you ever find yourself needing to go and do that, and connect the server to cloud service or cloud services if the need ever arises. Okay, so to summarize, the Windows Server Manager is a management console in Windows Server that helps IT professionals provision and manage both local and remote Windows-based servers from their desktops without requiring either physical access to server or the need to enable remote desktop protocol, or just RDP for short, to each server. Server Manager can be used to manage up to 100 servers from what I've seen. Obviously, this depends on the workloads that the servers are running. The number of servers that you can manage by using a single server management console can vary depending on the amount of data that you want to request from the managed servers and the hardware and the network resources available to the computer running the server manager. Alright guys, so that pretty much is it for Server Manager in a nutshell. So I think let's move on to our next topic, being remote server administration tools. Okay, so this allows IT administrators to remotely manage roles and features in Windows Server from a computer that is running either Windows 10 or 8.1. I suppose if Windows 7, that might be viable, but Microsoft does say that it's no longer supported. I suppose the same applies to Windows 8.1 now. Maybe in a year or two, the same is going to apply to Windows 10 now, considering that Windows 11 is being announced. Okay, so what does it actually include though? So this remote server administration tools includes the following: Active Directory Domain Services tools, DHCP server tools, DNS tools, failover clustering tools, file services tools, group policy management tools, and lastly, Windows Server Update Services tools. In other words, WSAS, as some people might know it. Now, with the remote server administration tools, you can't install this on client computers running home or standard editions of Windows. This can actually just be done on professional enterprise editions of the Windows Client operating system. Something I should probably also mention to you guys at this point in time, if you find yourself installing this tool, it generally is not automatically available. You're going to have to go and turn the sucker on first, and this can be done by a good old-fashioned way of just going to Programs and Features and then just going to the section that says Turn on or off Windows Features. So if you go in there, you'll find it there, just turn it on and Bob's your uncle. Alright guys, so let's move on to our next topic on the agenda, which is PowerShell. Now, PowerShell is a command line tool, much like Command Prompt for those of you that's familiar with CMD. Obviously, PowerShell is way newer and way better than CMD. You can't really go and compare the two. Ironically, PowerShell does accept Command Prompt commands though, and it also actually accepts a bunch of programming languages, mind you. Things like HTML and C++, just to mention a few. It goes without saying that PowerShell does accept PowerShell commands, obviously, but even though it does accept PowerShell commands, it actually does not by default accept all PowerShell commands. Sometimes you need to give it a helping hand and you need to go and install what we refer to as modules, which gives it additional functionality and basically in a nutshell allows it to understand additional commands. More on that in a second. Alright, so Windows PowerShell is a command line shell and scripting language that allows task automation and configuration management. Yeah, so this is actually a very great tool to go and use in IT if you ever find yourself needing to go and automate something. You can pretty much go and ask any IT person that's been in IT for a while, 5 years or 20 years, whatever the case might be, and they'll tell you one of the tools we use to go and automate something is PowerShell. Now you might say, hey, but I don't know PowerShell. That's fine. You know how many IT people there is out there that actually doesn't know PowerShell at all or that's got very limited knowledge of PowerShell. So there's a lot of free resources online that you can go and use. You can go to GitHub, you can go to TechNet. There's all kinds of Microsoft platforms where you can go and get PowerShell scripts. Sometimes some of them you can use as is. Some of them you might just need to go and tweak a name here, an IP address there. It's a matter of why reinvent the wheel when the wheel has already been invented. So just go and tweak it, according to your needs. Windows PowerShell CMD lets execute at a Windows PowerShell command prompt or combine into Windows PowerShell scripts. So you can go and open PowerShell on your computer. This can be on the client side or the server side, and you can manually go and type in the command yourself if you feel to go and do that. Or you can go and save this as a script and go run the script manually later, or you can go and hook the script up to something like maybe Task Scheduler or whatever the case might be and automate the heck out of it if you feel like to go and do that. Alright, and then we've got what we call CMDlets. These CMDlets are basically some of the commands. It's like little commands that we go and type into PowerShell. We call these CMDlets. Now you can go and type one CMDlet which might do one thing. You can go type another CMDlet which might do another thing. And if you go and combine them, that's just basically combining a CMDlet for the lack of a better term. So when it comes to CMDlets, they are small commands that perform specific functions. This could be pretty much anything actually. Can be combined to perform multiple tasks. So one CMDlet might be doing one small task, another one might be doing another small task, but if you combine them together, now suddenly they do multiple tasks. Goes without saying. Can be piped together to perform multiple operations if the need arises. And then we've got what we call modules. Now what the heck are modules? I did talk about those briefly earlier, about a minute or two ago. A module is basically a collection of CMDlets, giving your PowerShell additional functionality. So even though PowerShell understands most PowerShell commands, which we refer to as CMDlets, there is a few things that you're going to go and type in from time to time where PowerShell will have no freaking clue what you're talking about. So this happens most commonly when you try and manage something out of the ordinary. For example, SharePoint in the cloud. So if you're going to go and type in PowerShell commands for your SharePoint in the cloud, by default, your PowerShell is going to have no freaking clue what you're talking about. It's basically going to give you an error of some kind, which comes down to unrecognized command. Now, when you go and install the module for SharePoint in the cloud, that's all the CMDlets for your SharePoint in the cloud. It's going to install that as a package, so to speak. It's basically like an add-on. And once you've installed that module, in other words, that package or that collection of CMDlets, your PowerShell is now going to understand those CMDlets when you start typing them. So the next time you find yourself trying to type a PowerShell CMDlet or script for your SharePoint in the cloud, it's going to be like, oh, okay, now I know what you're talking about. This applies to quite a lot of things which is out of the ordinary. I'm just using SharePoint as an example. It could be Azure or Azure, depending on how you pronounce it. It could be Exchange in the cloud. It could be you name it. So whenever you try and manage something out of the ordinary, you're probably going to find yourself having to install some sort of module first. It could even be something as simple as Teams, mind you. Now you have to install the module for Teams. Once you've installed the module for Teams, in other words, the collection of CMDlets, your PowerShell is going to understand those commands that you type in for Teams the next time you type them in. So that's what a module is. So we've got modules here at the bottom. CMDlets specific to a product are packaged together and installed as modules. Basically what we just said in a nutshell. Some are installed with the product and some need to be added manually. So the ones that are installed with the product is the basic stuff from everyday use. The ones that's not installed is the ones which are out of the ordinary, like SharePoint Online. I mean, not everybody's got SharePoint Online, which is why it's not installed by default. Alright, then we've got PowerShell Integrated Scripting Environment is a graphical user interface based tool that allows you to do two things. First of which is run commands and create, modify, debug, and test scripts. Now when it comes to testing scripts, test the script while in deployment. How about them apples? That's pretty useful, right? Then we've got Windows PowerShell Remote Management. And when it comes to remote management, allows PowerShell to remotely run CMDlets on other Windows systems. That is definitely going to be something useful. And today we've already said everything is currently moving to remote and virtual and cloud. I mean, that is where everything is reading. We've already had this tool for quite some time. It's just people don't really use it as much. I'm not saying companies don't use it. It's just not as much as you would think. But these days, people are moving towards virtual, remote, and cloud. So people are using this definitely a lot more than what they used to. Unfortunately, when it comes to running this tool on those remote machines, that remote machine has to have the remote management service running on it. In other words, the target system. You'll see here it says depends on Windows remote management service running on the target system. So if that target Windows system is not running the remote management service, you're not going to be able to remotely connect to it. Bit of a schlep, but unfortunately that's facts of life. Then our last one here is PowerShell Direct. Very cool, useful function which allows you to run a PowerShell script inside of a virtual machine via your host machine. Now that is dope. So you can see here it says enables you to run a Windows PowerShell CMDlet or script inside of a virtual machine from the host. Now, I can't think of a situation right now at this moment why I would want to go and use that, but I definitely know that's something I'm definitely going to be using in the foreseeable future. Very, very useful function to go and use. Alright guys, that is pretty much PowerShell in a nutshell. That is all we need to know for the exam today. I will be doing a dedicated video just on PowerShell. And the same applies to pretty much all the other topics in this video. We're going to be doing dedicated videos on all of them where we're going to go more in depth on each of them. That is not necessarily going to be for the exam. That's just in general if you would like to know more about certain topics or how to go and do some of these topics. So stay tuned for those dedicated videos if you're curious about some of these topics in more depth. For now, let's move on to our next topic, which is overview of the least privilege administration concept. So always, always, always use the principle of least privilege. This is a rule in IT which I want to go so far as to say is a golden rule in IT, so I should actually have made that gold, never mind yellow. It's a golden IT rule which we all live by. So basically what this is in a nutshell is you never ever give someone more privilege, in other words permissions, than what they need to go and do a certain task. So if a certain user of yours, IT or otherwise, need to go and do a certain task, you're probably going to have to go give them some level of privilege, and you're going to give them the bare minimum privilege they need to go and do that certain task. Nothing more, nothing less. Specifically, nothing more. So we want to go and basically limit the amount of damage that that account can go and do. Whether it be that specific user or someone else taking advantage of that user's account, we want to limit the amount of damage that account can go and do, one way or another. That's a golden IT rule, not just in this course, not just in on-premises servers. It could apply to the cloud. It actually applies to just IT in general. Golden IT rule. Now, it's going to give you a few benefits, and this is just a few random ones I've added to this course of mine. It's not limited to these benefits. So the first benefit being protect against malicious users. Now, from my experience, when I had a lot of clients, and I've had a lot of clients in my experience, it's usually your own internal employees. Obviously, this could be external people as well. Now, internal employees could be an ex-employee, but in most cases, it's a current employee. We call this a disgruntled employee. He or she is upset for whatever reason. It could be a person that's got some level of IT knowledge, most likely. They're upset maybe because they didn't get the annual increase, didn't get the Christmas bonus, or whatever else reason, and he or she is now going to go and do some damage to your company. We effectively want to limit the amount of damage this individual can go and do with their account. So we're never going to completely be able to stop the damage. We just want to go and do damage control is what we want to go and do. So if this person has limited privileges, they can only go and access certain programs and certain data. That's the only data and programs they can go and tamper with. Anything and everything else should be relatively safe. So that's one of the reasons we want to go and do least privilege. Another reason is protect against incompetent users. I'm actually laughing now because I just felt like, let's just add that in there because it is actually a real life issue. I'm probably not supposed to put it in this course, but I feel I need to because that's a real thing. Incompetent users are people that just don't know what the heck they're doing in a company. I mean, let's face it, I think you guys can relate. You are going to have those people. So they're not maliciously doing this, or on purposely, I think is the word. They're not on purposely going to go and break something. But you get people that has no clue what they're doing. And if they've got too much permissions, they can accidentally break something. So we're still not going to completely prevent them from breaking something or deleting something. We just want to go and limit the amount of damage this individual can go and do. It's basically lie down before you hurt yourself kind of situation. And then we've got another one here, which is protect against compromised accounts. I think that speaks for itself. You probably know what that is. That's when your account or your user's accounts gets hacked. Now, one of the main targets for hackers, and I used to be one of the main targets for hackers is privileged accounts. This is normally IT people. I wouldn't say it's limited to IT people, but generally the accounts that's got privilege is IT individuals. IT people either have full privilege or limited privileges, but they've got some level of privilege. So if I'm going to try and hack you or your company, I'm going to target the IT people's accounts, because if I can gain access to your account, I've got more access than the average user, and I can potentially do some serious damage to your company now. Another account we would potentially target, which has actually got nothing to do with this specific topic at hand, is Smurf accounts. In a nutshell, that's basically just accounts that's not in use. So that's not a topic for now. We'll talk about that once we actually get to Active Directory and all that. Now, something you guys may or may not know, I guess it depends on whether you do this in your company or not. A lot of people don't actually know this, especially people that's new to IT. The main admins don't actually log on as the main admin most of the time. We go and create ourselves normal user accounts, or accounts that's got very limited privileges. So for a moment, we can imagine I'm one of the main admins in this company. Company X is what we can go and call it. And as the main admin, I will not log on as the main admin. I'm probably going to go and create myself a normal user account or a limited administrator account. That is the one I'm going to go use for my day-to-day tasks. I'm going to even go use a different PC. Different PC, different user account, and only when I absolutely need to will I go and log on as that privileged administrator, which might be a full-blown admin account. And if and when I need to go and do that, if at all possible, I'm going to go and use a different PC, mind you. What we also like to go and do, and I know not all companies do this because sometimes we're limited by budget and other things like that. I'm going to go and grab a different PC which has got, for the most part, almost nothing installed on it. There's nothing on it. Only what I absolutely need is going to be installed on that PC. Why? Because the more things you've got on that PC, the higher the risk that my account could potentially be compromised. So I'm only going to install what I need to install that machine. I'm only going to use that account when I need to use that account. As soon as I'm done, I'm going to log off. I'm going to turn that machine off. Hell, I might even unplug the damn machine if I'm really that paranoid. Then I'm going to go back to my everyday machine and log on of my everyday account, which is probably going to be a normal user account or a limited administrator account. So this just drastically reduces the risk of my account being compromised. Obviously, you're never going to completely mitigate that. We just want to effectively reduce the risk as much as we possibly can. All right, so I think that pretty much concludes least privilege. So let's move on to our next topic, which is delegated privileges. All right, so delegated privileges. Accounts that are members of high privilege groups such as enterprise admins and domain admins need to be guarded. But occasionally, non-admins need rights to perform certain functions, such as resetting passwords or modifying group memberships. Now, when it comes to these non-admins, these are probably going to be IT personnel. So what we can go and do is you can go and assign these IT personnel to pre-created built-in groups on Windows to go and reset these passwords and stuff. Alternatively, which is not something Microsoft recommends, but I do this quite a lot, you can go and make your own custom groups and assign these IT people or IT individuals to those custom groups. So this custom group could have rights to go and reset things like passwords. If you really want, you can go and just manually assign the permissions to that user itself, which is just a manual little wizard of delegated privileges that you can have to go and run. So what we also have here is built-in groups with predefined admin rights exist to allow users to perform specific admin tasks. If those groups do not suit your needs, you can delegate more granular permissions by using the delegation of control wizard. That's basically what I just said. I personally myself don't like using these built-in groups. Doesn't mean that's going to apply to you. Each company and each person is obviously unique. Your company, your requirements and your needs is going to be different than my company and my requirements and my needs. So in my case, I normally go and use the delegation of control wizard, which basically does the following. The wizard has predefined tasks that can be assigned to users or groups, or custom permissions can be assigned. So I'm going to show you guys that practically on server itself. I think that's going to make more sense if I actually show you guys practically on the server side itself. So let's switch on over to server quickly. Okay, so here we are on a server. I've taken the liberty of pre-installing the ADDS role, that's Active Directory. Now that is something we are going to be doing this course, just not today. That's a whole lesson on its own. So at some point we will be covering Active Directory, we will be covering DNS, show you guys what they are, how to go and install them, why we want to go and use them, the whole schlep. So after you've got Active Directory installed, and the funny thing is this is installed on a virtual machine in the cloud now. So not only do you have normal Azure Active Directory in the cloud, you can also go and create yourself a normal virtual machine in the cloud with server on it, which is what I have, and install Active Directory on top of that. So if you use Azure's Active Directory, I suppose that'll be an example of platform as a service. If you install the way I just did, I suppose you can call this infrastructure as a service. Anyway, so once you've got Active Directory installed, you're going to go here to Tools, top right hand side. That's the same as the old versions, the previous versions of servers. So you can go here to your Administrative Center, or alternatively users and computers. For now, I'm going to go to users and computers for those of you that's not familiar with the new Administrative Center. And there we go. So that's as default as it gets. There's absolutely nothing on here. I literally just installed Active Directory and made that fake domain. That's a fake domain, by the way. So there's nothing funny here. Absolutely default as it gets. So we're going to go into great depth with all of this at some point, just not today. So for today, my topic is to explain to you guys what delegated privileges is. So I'm going to go and pretend to create different branches here. And we'll explain that in a moment as to why. So first of all, I'm going to go right click here on my domain. I'm going to go here to where it says new, and I'm going to go and create what we call an organizational unit. We just call it OU for short in most cases in IT. So it's a logical grouping. So I'm going to go create an OU for a whole branch. What I call this does not matter. So let's call this New York. New York. So we've got one in America, New York. And I'm going to go and make myself another one. So let's go make about 2 or 3 of them. So let's make one called LA. And I think then lastly, let's go and make one called Washington, maybe. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Washington. That's usually the trick. All right, there we go. So as we have it right now, we've got 3 branches. So we can pretend that this Burning Ice Tech, which is the name of my channel coincidentally, that for argument's sake is the name of a company. This company, for argument's sake, has 3 branches. You can see right now we've got one in New York, one in Los Angeles, and one in Washington, D.C. So at the moment, I am the only IT guy here, the main cheese, if you will. And I'm managing all of that. So maybe in the beginning that's possible. You know, it's going to be a small company in the beginning. And as time goes on, this company grows and grows. They hire more and more employees, more and more departments. The workload just gets more and more. Now, what's going to happen here is there's going to be a certain point in time where I just can't do everything myself. I'm going to have to attend to so much, I'm just not going to get to everything. So, what we're going to go and do is we're going to start delegating privileges. I'm going to delegate some of my roles or some of my work. So, if I'm the main cheese here, or whoever's the main cheese, they can basically go and delegate some of their tasks to lower ranking IT people. It doesn't necessarily mean that these IT people know less than you. It could just be that they're in a lower rank than you. You know, they got hired in a lower rank position. Maybe it's a junior. Yeah, there could be any amount of reasons for it. So I'm going to go and delegate some of my access to some of the people at that branch. But before we can do that, I'm going to go and make different departments here. So I'm just going to use New York as an example. I'm not going to go doing this for each and every one of them. So let's go to New York. Let's make different departments, just 2 or 3. That should be enough. Let's make a sales department. There we go. Marketing department. There we go. IT department. That's the important one for this exercise. And there we go. So in the IT department, I'm going to go make 2 or 3 people. New user. Let's call this first guy Alex. Alex Smith. Let's keep it simple for now. Alex. Next. Give the guy a password. In case anyone's wondering what I'm doing here, don't worry. All of that is going to be covered in due course. That's going to be part of Active Directory once we get to Active Directory, so don't stress. User must change password next logon. I'm just going to say never expires for now. Next. Finish. There we go. So I'm just going to make one more extra just for now. Pop. Give him the same name. Pop. Password. And there we go. Password doesn't expire. Next and finish. There we go. So at each branch, you're going to have different departments, and each department you're going to have a ton of users, obviously. And what's going to happen is in each department, you're probably going to have groups as well. So these groups, I can have a group in the sales department called sales group. And what's going to happen is all the people in the sales department can be in the sales group. So whenever I need to apply a permission or a policy or what have you, I can instead apply it to the sales group instead of applying it to the whole damn users. Alright, so there we go. I've got my 3 different departments they've created. So I'm not going to go and make all the departments here. That's going to take me too long. So what's going to happen realistically is each company is probably at some point going to have a ton of users. And each of these departments is going to have, you know, a bunch of groups and all of that. So the groups is basically just going to help us do our bulk operations. So if I've got a permission or a policy I need to assign to people, am I really going to want to go to each and every user and assign that permission, that policy? Heck no, that's going to take me too long. So instead, I'm going to go and chuck them all into a group and assign that permission or policy to that group. So in the sales department, for example, here, I would have a group called sales. There could be more than one group in there. And one of them is going to be called sales. All the sales people in the sales department will be in the sales group. And if I need to assign a permission or a policy which is only relevant to the sales personnel, I would assign it to the sales group. So that's going to make your life a lot easier and a lot quicker. So what I'm going to go and do is, here at the IT department, I'm going to try and give one of these guys, let's say Alex, more privileges. At the moment, he or she is currently just a normal user. So as time progresses, like we said earlier, I'm not going to be able to get to all of these branches. This could be something as simple as resetting passwords. Now, at some point, once we've got a lot of users every day, I can guarantee you people are going to be logging tickets or opening job cards saying, I forgot my password. I can't get in. Please help me. Boo hoo hoo. And yes, you can go and help them. It's not going to take you forever. It's going to take you like a minute, 2 minutes tops to go and reset someone's password. But if you're going to have to go and do that continuously every day throughout the day, it's going to consume a lot of your free time. And that's just passwords. I haven't even talked about other topics yet. So what we can do here is, I would say delegate that, that resetting passwords nonsense. Delegate that to some junior at that branch. I mean, obviously we all need to grow, and that's a perfect opportunity for that individual to grow. And as they, gain confidence, and as they become more loyal, and as you trust them more, you can gradually give them more and more privileges, depending on whether your company actually allows that. So I'm going to give Alex, which is a junior now at this branch New York, I'm going to give him or her the opportunity to grow by giving them privilege to go and reset people's passwords. How you can do that is by right clicking on that branch or that specific department. I'm going to right click on the whole branch and go and say delegate control. So Alex will have control over the whole New York branch. The control he or she will have is whatever control I give them. If I were to go and right click only on a certain department and I say delegate control, he or she will have control, but only over that specific department in this case. Assuming that's a department, it depends on how you organize this or structured this. In my case, I structured this as a branch, and in this branch, that's different departments, obviously. So I want Alex to help me with that whole branch, being the whole New York branch. So I'm going to go click here way at the top, delegate control, next. Here you get to add a user or multiple users or a group or multiple groups that you want to assign permissions to. So for today, it's just going to be one user. You're not limited to one user. It could be multiple users, could be multiple groups, your choice. Add, who am I looking for? I'm looking for Alex, the person I literally just created. So let's go run a search. You can see it finds Alex. Okay. What do I want to go and do? Do I want to add more people? No, not for now. That's fine for now. Next. And here we have a list of some of the privileges we can actually go and give this individual. This is called delegating privileges. You can see delegation of control wizard is the one we talked about lastly on that little list of mine. So what control do I want to give this individual? We obviously don't want to give this person full control. That's a bit risky. I don't know this person yet. Maybe this person was hired like last month. Doesn't mean they don't have a lot of experience. It's just we don't trust this person individually yet. Or it could just be that this is a junior and we're trying to upskill this person by giving them slightly, more permissions, and then eventually after another month, more permissions. So I'm going to start him or her off with something simple like resetting users' passwords and forcing passwords to change at the next logon. Next, finito, and there we go. So now when Alex logs onto the Active Directory, he or she will have the ability to go to, I'm just going to use IT department because there's only a department I've got people. He or she will have the ability to go and right click on a user and they will see this option here that says reset password. Obviously, I've got that option because I'm a main admin. I'm one of the main cheeses here. He or she will not necessarily have all these other options like copying, add to group, they won't have all of these other options like deleting. Not necessarily. The only permissions or privilege I've given this individual is the ability to go and reset password. So this individual's menu is going to be a lot smaller than the one you guys see in front of you right now. I've got a big menu here because, well, I'm a main admin. So that's effectively all it is when you go and delegate control. You've just seen what the delegation of control wizard looks like. So delegation of control wizard is simply when you go right click on an OU and there it says delegate control. That's the delegation of control wizard. If you don't want to go and do that, you can just go and add a person to a built-in group. I personally don't like using the built-in groups because I find them to be, I don't know, they're not tailor-made for me, I think is the word I want to go and use. Microsoft says you should go and use these. I feel like they're not tailor-made for my needs, my requirements. So I personally prefer to just go and make my own damn groups and just add my people to those groups and delegate access to those groups. So where this is also exceptionally useful is if you've got a company with multiple branches, and at each branch you may or may not have multiple Active Directories. So there's going to be an Active Directory at New York branch, there's going to be one at LA, there's going to be one at Washington, and at each of these branches we normally call that an RODC, Read Only Domain Controller. So that's effectively a clone of the main domain controller. So for all we know, Washington DC is the main branch. That's the parent branch or the root branch of the root Active Directory, the root Active Directory being the main server. And the ones we've got at LA and New York are clones of the main server. We call these clones RODCs. So if I go and do some sort of change at Washington DC on the main root Active Directory, that change is going to basically synchronize or replicate to the child domains here, or the child servers. We call those child servers, RODCs. By default, people at that branch, including the IT people, have zero privilege. They cannot do diddly squat unless I go and delegate control. So this could be a normal branch, a child branch, so to speak, or a child server. And I've just delegated access at that branch so that individual at that branch in an IT department can help me out. And I'm going to do that at each branch. So for all we know, there's 5 branches, 10 branches, 20 branches, and at each branch in an IT department, I've got 1 or 2 IT people whom I've delegated access to, and they're my little helpers, effectively, is what it is. Alright guys, so that is it for delegating control or delegating privilege. I think let's move on to our next topic. Privileged access workstations. Now, believe it or not, we actually already covered this topic earlier when we mentioned some of the other topics, specifically privilege. And earlier when we spoke of privilege, I specifically mentioned that as an administrator, someone that's got a high level of privilege, we don't normally use that high level privileged account on a day-to-day basis. We normally go and create ourselves a normal account and use a normal PC for our day-to-day tasks. And only when I absolutely need to will I go and use that admin PC with that high privileged admin account. This is just to obviously mitigate the risks. We are going to drastically reduce the risk of that account getting compromised. That PC is obviously going to be tied down. It's going to have high level of security on it. There's going to be minimal stuff installed on it. So whenever I need to go and do my day-to-day tasks, I'm going to go use my normal account, my normal PC. And when the time arrives where I need to go and do some sort of high-level admin task, I'm going to switch over to that PC, log on with my high-level admin account, get the job done, log out, turn the PC off, and if you're really paranoid, maybe even unplug that PC. That's what it is in a nutshell. So that's a privileged access workstation. Anyway, so you can see here they say a privileged access workstation is a computer that is used for performing only administration tasks, protected from the internet and locked down so that only required administration apps can run. It's locked down in more than one way. Microsoft recommends using Windows 10 Enterprise in one of these profiles. So, obviously with Windows 11 being released, it might even be Windows 11 by the time you watch this video. So this video was obviously made in 2021. By the time you guys watch this, it might be Windows 11 for all we know. So you get dedicated hardware and simultaneous use. Alright, so there's not much more to be said about privileged access, which I have not said in the previous topics when we talked about privilege. So I'm only going to go and repeat. So if you've got privileged access workstations, that's simply a workstation that you're only going to be using when you absolutely need to with a privileged account. What I'll also add on to here is it's highly advisable to go and get yourself MFA, multi-factor authentication. So tie that PC or that machine down with MFA. So that basically concludes the privileged access workstation, since we've pretty much already covered this in the previous topics, which leaves us with our last topic for today being jump servers. Now, when it comes to jump servers, a jump server is a hardened server used to access and manage devices in a different security zone, such as between an internal network and a perimeter network. A jump server would typically be accessed by a privileged access workstation to ensure secure access. This server will run on dedicated hardware that supports both hardware and software-based security features such as credential guard to encrypt the domain credentials in memory, remote credential guard, even that, to prevent remote credentials from being sent to jump servers, instead using Kerberos protocol version 5 single sign-on tickets. Device guard, HVCI, to leverage virtualization-based security to enforce kernel mode components to comply with code integrity policy. And lastly, device guard, config code integrity to allow admins to create custom code integrity policy and specify trusted software. So that's pretty much what a jump server is. It's just to give you that extra level of security for those of you that's really paranoid. I suppose this does depend on the nature of your business and the nature of your company. Some of us are just paranoid. Sometimes we really just don't have a choice because of the nature of your business. Alright guys, so that is all for today. We've basically covered all the topics for today. If you guys have not done so already, please give this video a like. I do put a lot of effort into these videos. If you have not done so already, also consider subscribing to the channel. At least then you'll know when the next episode comes out. So the next one is obviously going to be episode 3 for this series. Alternatively, go have a peek at some of the other series I've got on this channel. And I'll see you guys next time on episode 3. Bye guys. If you love me, let me know. If you don't, then let me.